The Deathworld Council chamber was built to endure anything the galaxy could throw at it. Superheated plasma storms, gravity surges, vacuum breaches, even controlled singularity events. What it wasn't built for, however, was a human. And that was why the chair at the far end of the chamber was empty. It wasn't broken or destroyed, it was just waiting. High Counselor Vrextal nervously adjusted his armored plates as the meeting came to order. Seated around him were representatives of the galaxy's deadliest species, apex predators from nightmare worlds. Civilizations bred for eternal war, survivors of planets that would kill lesser beings in mere minutes. Yet, despite their own fearsome reputations, every single one of them kept glancing at that empty seat. "Let the record show," Vrextal began, his voice echoing slightly in the grand chamber, "that the human asset remains on standby status." A low ripple of unease spread through the room. The human wasn't a counselor, not an ambassador, officially, not even a weapon. If the human chair was ever occupied, it meant something had already gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. They didn't occupy worlds, they stripped entire star systems down to molten debris and then moved on, without communication, negotiation, or mercy. Entire civilizations vanished from existence without ever understanding why. The Council did everything by the book. They deployed fleets, established defensive lines, and enacted emergency laws, and all of it failed. The Carrack ships adapted faster than their most advanced simulations could predict. New weapons became obsolete between volleys. Shields that held for 1 minute failed in seconds the next. As desperation mounted, a forbidden vote was cast. They decided to contact the humans. At that time, humanity was barely considered a mid-tier power. They had no planet-shattering weapons, no psychic species, no bioengineered warforms. All they had were themselves, stubborn, violent survivors from a class-12 Deathworld, who had a disturbing knack for doing the impossible. The Council didn't ask them to fight, they simply asked them to look. The human they sent was named Captain Mara Cade. She arrived completely alone. No escort, no war fleet, no demands. She stepped into the command center, studied the battlefield data for exactly 6 minutes, and then spoke 5 words that changed everything. "You're fighting them wrong." The Council members bristled at the audacity. How could this lone human from a backwater species possibly see what their greatest military minds had missed? Then she elaborated. "You're trying to win," she said, her tone level. "Stop that. Make it hurt instead." What followed was not a conventional war. Human fleets didn't try to match the Carrack's overwhelming firepower. They didn't need to. Instead, they lured them into traps. They orchestrated ambushes in asteroid fields. They overloaded physics itself, creating gravity traps from collapsing stars, generating debris storms from detonated moons, and synchronizing reactor detonations on their own ships to coincide precisely with enemy adaptation cycles. They lost ships, they lost people, but for the first time in its history, the Carrack's lost its certainty. For the first time, the erasers hesitated, and in a war against an implacable foe, hesitation was enough. Within 2 months, the Carrack's withdrew from the galaxy entirely. There was no victory declaration, no peace treaty, just absence. They were gone, and after that day, the Deathworld Council added a new, secret clause to its charter. One human will always be kept on standby, not deployed, not commanded, just waiting, for the day when the rules no longer apply. Back in the present, a junior counselor, her voice, tight with anxiety, broke the tense silence. "High Counselor, why is the chair still empty?" "Our intelligence reports show unusual activity near the Perseus fringe." Vrextal's mandibles clicked together, a sign of his own deep-seated stress. "Because," he said, choosing his words with immense care, "the human has not yet been called." A heavy, profound silence descended upon the chamber. Everyone understood the implication. Calling the human meant escalating a situation beyond conventional war. It meant the established rules of engagement would be bent, and possibly broken. It meant survival would come first, and ethics would have to follow later, if at all. And then, the alarms sounded. Not the standard yellow alerts for stellar flares or the orange alerts for pirate activity. These were the deep, blaring red alarms that hadn't been heard since the Carrack's incursion. A shimmering distortion bloom appeared in the very center of the chamber, a real-time holographic projection. An unknown fleet was phasing into their reality, not using any known hyperspace methods. The tactical display updated with terrifying speed, hull structures unfamiliar, Energy readings, unstable, off the charts. Intent, unknown, but assumed hostile. The councillors began shouting over one another, panic rising. Activate planetary shields. Mobilize the reserve fleets. Evacuate the core worlds immediately. Brextol raised a single, heavy claw, and the room fell silent once more. Prepare the chamber, he said, his voice quiet but firm, cutting through the chaos. He took a deep breath. Bring in the human. The grand doors at the far end of the chamber hissed open. Captain Mara Cade walked in, looking just as unassuming as she had 3 cycles ago. She wore a plain, functional jacket, and held a half-empty coffee cup in one hand. She glanced at the chaotic projections of the unknown fleet, sighed wearily, and took a slow sip. So, she said, her voice calm and cutting through the tension. What did I miss? No one answered. The sheer gravity of her presence was enough to silence the galaxy's most powerful leaders. She set her cup down on the edge of the council table, rolled her shoulders as if preparing for a workout, and offered a smile that held no warmth, no kindness. It was the smile of a predator. That fleet, she continued, gesturing at the swirling holographic ships. They're not invading. The council members leaned forward as one, hanging on her every word. They're scouting, she explained, and if they're here, she tapped the display, highlighting multiple, vast dark zones in the void beyond known space, then they've already seen enough out there to be afraid of something else. They're running. She looked around the chamber, her gaze meeting the eyes of every being in the room. Good news, she said. We can still stop this. A collective, silent sigh of relief was almost audible. Then she added, bad news. You're not going to like how Brextol swallowed, the sound loud in the quiet room. The empty chair was empty no longer. And somewhere, across the vast expanse of the galaxy, something ancient, something that had sent this scout fleet running in fear, felt the first, unfamiliar stirrings of its own dread. Because when the Deathworld Council calls the human, it doesn't mean they're about to fight a war. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe,